I'll stand by my sort of retro gothic horror theme here, because when we think of higher ed, we think of profs, grads, and undergrads with sunken eyes, long nights and early mornings, finals and huge papers, and a strong caffeine dependency. What we don't think of is the causes for this beyond school is hard, because of course it is. And the fact is, more than anything, this is a labor issue. And that's what Marc Bousquet does in his work, which I'll be, to the best of my abilities, presenting to you today. But first, a word from our sponsor. Just kidding, I don't have a sponsor. Jokes aside, the main issue Bousquet points to in his seminal thesis is the corporatization of the university. A larger historical process contextualized in the turn of the millennium explosion of corporate America, and the university's compliance with it. The growing commodification of university aesthetics, t-shirts, sports teams, books, all the stuff that is so expensive and constantly thrusted into our faces as students, and especially the use of cheap labor through grads and even undergrad workers, and the shrinking of the full-time faculty in the university, spearheaded largely by the big standard setters, the Big Ten, the Ivy League lot. Bousquet acutely compares the new management of the university to the insidious management of healthcare, but notes some differences in this corporatization process, notably quoting from page 55 here, "Most strikingly, the HMO is the object of widespread concern, whereas student satisfaction with management-dominated higher education has never been higher, at least according to corporate university surveys. According to these sources, students in all institution categories are overwhelmingly satisfied with the learning dimensions of their college experience, in many cases reserving their complaints for the quality of food and availability of parking." Even more crucially, Bousquet notes, is the idea that tech is driving the transformations in higher ed. This presents a contradiction, that to faculty, students would be alright with a disembodied experience through virtual learning, since it would meet their main concerns, food and parking, while in fact, embodied learning in person, consistently presents itself as the ideal form of education in the university setting to the student. To admin, Bousquet says, it is the capitalist dream. No workers, no labor to pay, just automated learning. So how do we interpret this? Well, like any labor-saving technology, tech and the university could create, quoting this time Noble on 58, commodify research into intellectual capital, that is, property. And second, the beginning of a process that Noble calls the commodization of the education function of the university. That is to say, taking what we know and expect of the university and basically commodifying it, where education is the product and the facilitators of education, faculty, grad workers, etc., are the labor. And where there is the exploitation of labor, as in any industry, you better believe, sadly, that there is also gender and race-based discrimination, which Bousquet portrays through the case of this Lucy Snow. Despite these lofty ideas of full-time faculty living these secure, comfortable, paternalistic positions as educators, we see women faculty consistently snubbed and adversely exploited by the patriarchal capitalist structure of the university. And a lot of this comes from the cultural idea of education for the public good, which continues to justify the exploitation of especially women professors, and as with any industry, the idea that as women enter a field, it somehow becomes women's work and is subsequently devalued. And what will fight this tide, this really a tsunami, says Bousquet? First, the wave of mainly tenure stream faculty and their labor organizing, who have, relatively speaking, more strongly secured positions and maybe a little more weight than their junior colleagues. And then, of course, the swell of graduate employees who, as students and workers, have a unique position and relationship with the largest body of people in the university, undergraduates. And as Bousquet notes, the labor force in the university is enormous. It is far more encompassing than an outside observer might assume, and includes not just workers I've mentioned, but the custodial staff, the maintenance staff, the engineering staff, white-collar and clerical workers. And of course, in all of these industries, union organizing has a direct relationship with the more secure and equitable conditions of these workers. Despite this, though, that we are at our core all workers, Bousquet points to this idea of tenured bosses and disposable teachers, the results of the GI Bill and other historical events, and the practice of hiring disposable labor, adjuncts and grado employees, and the subsequent scarcity of tenured positions. Bousquet is a tad more critical than even I would be of pragmatic solidarity between these power dynamics, and especially critical of these ideas of putting us all on the same playing field through things like the WPA, which he sees as something the university needs to be entirely without, which I would certainly agree with. While Bousquet notes that we can't look at the university as a typical Fordist industry, his approach of noting power dynamics between these different workers is key to his assessment and his conclusion. While not all grad employees or adjunct faculty are totally anti-market or anti-capitalist, their unionization efforts, wherever their failures and successes may lie, are going to be the spearheads in shifting this vampiric market-oriented university. He references the old adage that, oh, these workers are going to be organizing themselves out of a job, as if the university won't hire them if this push continues. But, just like any other industry, their work still needs to be done, and if anything, these exploitative capitalist practices have shown that the work of grad employees and adjunct faculty, this cheap education labor, are the norm now. Oh what, are you going to open up more tenure positions? Fantastic, that's what we want. Bousquet puts a huge emphasis on the collective power of this group, because the profiteers of their exploitation have, in a way, forced themselves into a corner. The demand for education remains, and its production through the laborers of the university are fed up.